Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. And today, I'm not going to hold your hand when I say this, but you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And this conversation is about boundaries, personal self-advocacy, and, the relationships that we have in our lives. And I think anybody can relate to today's conversation, but truly, I guess I'm talking to the oldest daughters, the married women, the parents, any of those people who have consistently given of themselves, even to the extent that it's a default to give of themselves. So what we're talking about today is like this loss of autonomy and how motherhood and marriage can subtly erode your sense of privacy and personhood. Any of us who have children can relate to when your kids were toddlers, or some of y'all are still going through it right now with toddlers. And when they're little, like they can walk pretty much, like, they just start walking so they can find you. You can't just put them in the bouncer and like go take a shower or, make yourself something to eat or take a nap when they take a nap. Like they get moving. And what's interesting is I think we all can relate to when we have toddlers is this sense of like they want to be with you all the time. And like mothers often talk about how like they literally have to like talk to children while they're on the toilet or, through the bathroom door if they even get to close the door, because them kids think they own you, honey, after you have let them live in your body. And so many people during specifically like the toddlerhood stage are like, telling their little child, girl or boy, like, give me a second. And you can all relate to like not even being able to have like those 3 minutes to yourself to take a dump, unfortunately, because before they come knocking and screaming and looking for you and putting the APB out on you. So I'm like, we've joked about that, I think, in motherhood spaces. But the reality is, I think what we're all talking about is a shared sense of frustration. So we may joke about it and frame it like, oh, ha, 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 my kids, can locate me. But the reality is what we really are saying is this like this subtle cry for help and understanding and relatability that like you feel like you're starting to lose yourself. You're starting to lose your privacy in your personhood. And I think it's really important to talk about like, how does that even happen? And why does that happen? Because I think, to those of us that have had male counterparts when we were parenting, it doesn't seem like it happens to them. Even the most present and wonderful fathers, like it just doesn't happen to them like that. They still get to be who they are, aside from their role as like, father, parent, caregiver. And I think the reason or part of the reason why this can happen to women is there's this assumption of constant access to women's bodies and time. And this is not something that I think is new. Like this is old, baked in, social conditioning that women are possessions and we are, all-encompassing sources of nurturing and care and attention, and that we really become resources to people instead of just being acknowledged as human beings ourselves. And because of that underlying social norm, it's so easy when a woman decides to, get married and partner herself to somebody or to have children. It's just very easy for people to just like not even bat an eye at the fact that she has lost the version of herself that she once had, or that she's become consumed into this new space and this new role. And I think this loss of your personhood, your womanhood, continuously goes unnamed because we just don't like to like rock the boat, like as a society. Like it's a social expectation that women just give without complaint. That you just show up and that we somehow just find constant joy in being available to everyone. And while some people do, it doesn't mean that it's not depleting, and it doesn't overwhelm you to the extent that like you start to feel like you don't know who you are anymore. You can't tell, you don't recognize yourself in the mirror when you look at yourself. And then I think the interesting part about that too is like this role adjustment usually happens in some of the most like overwhelming and stressful times in your life, because even though we celebrate the birth of babies and we celebrate marriage and weddings and things like that, the reality is those are stressful times because they're lifestyle shifts, they're paradigm shifts. The dynamics in your home and your lifestyle have to change dramatically. And those are things that really can add anxiety that is underlying that you don't understand about, or that just pressure to perform and to do well. And under those kinds of circumstances, you are prone to absolutely feeling overwhelmed and like overloaded with like expectation. And what's interesting is like when you're already overloaded with the fact that you were like, an employee or a student, or, you have other responsibilities, your own personal health and goals and interests. And then you have all, this pressure of other people's unfettered access to you. Even small intrusions, or what people may perceive as small, feel extremely massive. Like, I'll give y'all an example. Everybody, for the most part, we're talking about healthy, well-adjusted people, love their kids, right? Love and adore their children. However, when you're trying to just take a little moment to woosah and, sit on the couch, take a breath after a long day, or after you've changed the baby, or, after you got off work or whatever, you just need a minute. And your child comes up, we can stay in the toddler lane, or, sometimes even older, and they're just like patting on your shoulder, patting on your leg constantly. And you keep kind of saying like, as best you can, hey, okay, give me a second, or mommy's not ready, like mommy needs a beat. And it's like, they don't care. Like, they don't care about you being a person and that you need a minute and that you're unregulated and you're not going to be your best self. They just want what they want with you and from you in that moment. And eventually, most of us understand the reaction of that snap. And so many people, I wouldn't even use the word guilty of it, but so many people have had that experience where you've snapped and you were like, stop. Like you literally had to like shake the child, not physically, but I'm like, you literally had to like shake them out of that desire to constantly like want you and your space and your energy and your attention, because you're like, I've asked multiple times, to please give me space and give me a second, give me some room to be a human being. And they just like, girl, I don't give a damn about you being a human being and you not being okay. Like, I want to say what I want to say and I want to do what I want to do. And you end up having that moment. I don't think that snap reaction makes you unreasonable. And I think as a woman, because we're so conditioned to and expected to constantly give of ourselves without ever demanding space and personhood, that the people who on the receiving side of that snap think that you're being unreasonable. It's like, it's obviously something wrong with you. You're having a bad day. You're not in the mood. Not that that's a human being under a tremendous amount of stress and I probably should have backed off. I shouldn't have been trying to like say or do whatever it is that I thought was right or best in the moment. And obviously small children don't necessarily have the regulation for that, but it is okay if you've had that moment. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad parent because you was like, bruh, I'm gonna need you to sit down somewhere because you're doing too much and I've given all I already had to give. Because your nervous system is the complete like regulatory system of your body, right? Like keeping yourself sane and calm as best as you can makes it possible for you to show up for other people, show up for your other responsibilities, show up for work, show up for school, clean up at the house. And it really is that conversation around like putting your mask on first. And like I said, most of us have heard that for the first time on an airplane, but it has so much truth to it. Because if I cannot breathe, I cannot help you. And that is figurative and literal at the same time. If I cannot breathe, I cannot help you. So it would just be like, give me a freaking second to get my mask on to make sure that I'm okay and I'm regulated so that I am capable of even showing up for myself and for other people. And there's nothing wrong with setting, a set of boundaries around that, or having a moment where you feel like you lost your composure and your patience with people respecting your needs when that happens. So that brings us to the conversation around boundaries, because I think, unfortunately, we only ever talk about boundaries after someone has violated us, or in spaces where we kind of feel like we've already been taken advantage of. And I think proactive boundaries are important, but the reality is you have to defend those boundaries. And because you have to defend them, the people who offend them seem to always think that you're punishing them. So we use the toddler example. 9 times out of 10, when they kept smacking on your leg and beating on your shoulder for that attention, and then you finally just snapped and were like, stop, they cry. Now the attention is on you. Now it's about you. I'm supposed to stop, my sense of overwhelm. I'm supposed to ignore the fact that I was trying to have some space for myself, because now you've made it about you, because you're about to scream and cry and throw up and like start throwing a tantrum all over the floor because, oh my God, mommy was mean to me. And that is something that we have to learn to communicate and hold strong on, and even when it's not children. You have to do it with children and when it's not children, because boundaries are not punishments. Like, boundaries are supposed to be there to protect you. They're not there to hurt or offend or cause damage to somebody else. Their whole purpose is to make sure that you feel safe and taken care of. So when somebody has that, like, so you hate me kind of reaction to your boundaries, that's a them problem. That's a them problem. That's not a you issue. And I think people often personalize your boundaries for, a couple reasons. And I think one is a lack of accountability. So many people find it incredibly impossible to hold a mirror up to themselves and their behavior and see when they are objectively wrong. And even if they aren't objectively wrong, when they aren't necessarily objectively right either. And because of that lack of self-awareness, people tie something that you've made about yourself to keep yourself safe and protected and sane about themselves. And like I said, in that moment with the toddler, they start screaming and hollering and throwing a tantrum all over the floor. And now my thing where I just really needed to decompress has now become a thing where you want me to stand up and like comfort you. And I'm not going to comfort you for making me uncomfortable. But that's really how people tend to respond to you setting up boundaries. And I think also the expectation of availability that we talked about, like that women lose their autonomy, and it's like, seems like it's okay and it's expected that you should just constantly give of yourself when you decide to become a mother, or you decide to become a wife or a long-term partner to a spouse, that like, it's almost like par for the course. Like, duh, you should have understood that, girl, it's over for you. Like, you don't get to be you anymore. You here for us. And because of those two things, that lack of personal accountability and this expectation of constant availability or access to you, this entitlement that people will personalize when you start saying, yeah, it's not going to work. Like, I can't I can't continue like this. And I think it's just important in those moments for all of us to understand that letting other people feel comfortable without fixing it is absolutely okay. It's okay to let that baby cry on the floor, pout, walk around, stumping around with an attitude or whatever. That's okay. That's okay. Because they get to have their big feelings too, but that shouldn't change, how you chose to show up for yourself. And it's important to choose self-respect over emotional appeasement of other people. Like, if the cost of advocating for myself is hurting your feelings, that's just how much it costs. because, see, I think people don't realize that like every instance of hurting somebody's feelings does not warrant an apology. And I think we've gotten so used to like doing it in this very performative way. There's like, oh my God, you made me feel a certain way that I don't like. And now that means I'm supposed to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to feel that way. But the reality is, if I have an electric fence around my house and I had a sign up that said, hey, don't just be coming over here haphazardly because my fence shocks people, and then you come anyway and you get shocked, you think I care? Like, I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, that's how people act. Like, they expect you to come running outside, with the first aid kit or call 911 because they laying on your floor crispy in your yard. And it's like, well, why would I do that? The boundary performed exactly how the boundary was supposed to perform. And because the boundary had been stated, you could have chosen to not violate my boundary. And everybody would have been okay. But you chose, despite the sign, right, for space and do not enter, to do it anyway, and then you got zapped. Hey, friends. Like, that's exactly how boundaries work. My boundary is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So because you got tagged, doesn't mean I owe you an apology. It's supposed to be a situation where you go like, well, shoot, they was dead serious about don't just be coming over their house without, announcing yourself or asking for permission. But most people don't ever self-reflect and be like, what did I do wrong in that situation? It's definitely like, they shouldn't have done that. Why would they have an electric fence? And it's like, girl, get out of here. And not everybody has kids. And I did say that this, conversation is about motherhood, but it was also about my long-term partnership girlies, my married girlies, who are like, we don't have kids yet, but I kind of feel the same way. Like, I know what you mean about that. Like, I definitely feel like I've lost, some of my sense of self within relationships or within the relationship that I'm currently in. And something that we as women need to really examine and challenge. Something we as women need to examine and challenge is that being partnered does not mean forfeiting solitude or control of your own life and your own story. Like, I cannot stand that notion of like, we become one. We're blended. Girl, no, we didn't. No, we did not. You're a human being, I'm a human being, and then we've decided to go on this journey together as two human beings. Not we blending into like one symbiotic, organism. Like, if you don't get out of here, like, that's just not for me. Like, I don't rock with that. But I remember I was a young girl. Like, I probably was like 15, somewhere between 14 and 16. And my sister's mom, I don't even know why she was telling me this. Like, we used to have all these great conversations in the car when she took me to school. And she was like, don't you be with nobody who uses language like, you complete me, or you're my better half, and things like that. And I was like, okay. I'm listening. I'm like, what you mean? Because obviously that's the kind of stuff you hear. You hear that in, romantic comedies. You hear that in like, any kind of romance or relationship kind of spheres. And she was like, absolutely not. Relationships are supposed to be for two whole beings. Don't you get with no half a person who is going to be looking for you to fill the gaps in the voids of their life and the things that they haven't personally worked on and taken responsibility for. Yes, you want to be with somebody where y'all complement each other, but absolutely not that you get in a relationship with somebody who's always talking about my better half. It's like, no, you your two holes. You your two halves and make them one whole, okay? And I'm my one whole. And, 'cause I was young and I heard her, but it was just like, okay. And now as an adult, I totally understand like where that comes from, because it's incredibly exhausting to have somebody draining on you to fulfill like whatever their potential need is. And there's definitely like a myth that that love equals unlimited access to somebody. Like, I know there's people who like literally talk about, their relationships, in public or online or whatever. And they talk about like they use the bathroom with the door open, like literally. That's so gross and so weird to me. Just strange. And things like that. But it's just like, I think that it's odd that like you need to be tethered like glue to somebody. And I remember, like as an example, back in the day, like I haven't watched it in many, many years, but like the first probably 3 seasons of I think the Braxtons or whatever, they used to always make fun of Tamar and Vince because they called them Velcro. That's what her sisters joked and called them Velcro because they was never apart. Like they did every single breathing thing together before they even had the little boy. And they talked about it. They always talk about her because that's really unhealthy. Like it's that person who's always like, "Can my boyfriend come on a girls trip?" Pardon? Like that is not love. That's dysregulation. Like if you can't feel safe and happy and comfortable in your own company or without another person being your security blanket, that's a nervous system regulation issue. Like that's an emotional system dysregulation. That's a call for therapy. Like you need to, fix your own issues and shortcomings, not find somebody who's willing to deal with it and then be like, "Oh, that's because I found the love of my life." And that's what that means. And like say unfettered access to somebody should not be the price of saying that I love you and I no longer get to be, a person and have any, space for myself. So I think it's important that we like talk about like redefining respect in relationships as awareness and not entitlement. Because really, if you love somebody and they love you, like you should be somebody who's real keyed into what are my needs? What are my needs? What are my desires? And I'm hoping to do the same for you. Like I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to like your needs and your desires. And obviously it's not a perfect science, we're human. But that should be the point. It should never be this sense of like, I owe you something or you owe me something just because I decided to be in a relationship with you. And when I decide to not do that, or I'm not comfortable with that, or I'm overwhelmed by that somehow it becomes an issue about me. And, another thing with us as women, like I said, that kind of stuff is super overwhelming. A lot of times we don't vocalize that level of overwhelm and how much tax, we're paying and how much toll it's taking on us. But what I think we need to also do, especially because we're trying to level set and we're trying to teach people how to treat us and, even teach ourselves like what we deserve in spaces, is that we have to let go of the need to be pleasant while we're overwhelmed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know anybody whose natural state is, putting on a smile and a high-pitched voice when they are depleted, when they are lacking sleep, when they're overwhelmed, when they're tired, when they're stressed about something, when they're in pain. Nobody expects you to be like a joyful, patient person. So I think we as women need to remember that we're human, and we have to start resetting the expectation around this whole like social expectation that we can just keep giving without complaint, and we don't get overwhelmed, or we're not frustrated, and it's not normal to be overwhelmed and frustrated. We have to, if you are pissed off or irritated, you need to just let people know you're pissed off and irritated, because that alone is a boundary. It starts to teach people in an overt way that like it's gone too far. Oh, I've had too much. And it's like I need a second, not just like constantly swallowing it. And I think in those situations, your tone matters more. Your clarity matters more than like tone policing yourself. And I can't stand that. Like, again, and we talked about this probably in like episode 1, where I was like, that's kind of what I'm done doing in my life, is like constantly trying to filter myself despite an internal sense of like pressure or overwhelm. But then still trying to find a way to like turn the dial down on it to make it more palatable for somebody. I think we have to stop doing that. Your clarity is far more important than policing the way it comes out or the way it comes across. I do think it's important, even in your frustration and your overwhelm, to do your best to stay on topic. So if you are, expressing a frustration to somebody, if you are talking to somebody who you're in relationship with and you care about the relationship, and you want to to get your point across, I think it's important to stay on topic, don't start veering off into like, and when you did this on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because that could happen, in relationships and things like that. But like, just don't get defensive. Don't say things that are just inherently hurtful because you're overwhelmed, and just stay on topic. Now, again, I'm not telling you that's not going to guarantee that the person can take it, because like I said before, there's an accountability issue with human beings and women. And an expectation that you're supposed to just show up for them no matter what. So just because you were clear about your needs and expectations doesn't mean that they're going to like understand, comprehend, not get defensive, and do anything about it. However, your responsibility is to just, be succinct, talk about the thing, talk about the boundary that was, violated, and just leave it there. It is not your job to necessarily even make them understand. It's just your job to state your case. And it's important too, I think, to like own your personal irritation without letting it turn into any kind of guilt either. Because again, because there's this sense of like entitlement toward women, to our bodies, to our time, to our energy, to our bandwidth, you will very easily get bullied and guilted by the person who you directly are having conflict with, or your circle even. Some people's moms, some people's sisters, aunties, grandmas would be like, oh, well, what happened? Well, you said that to him or her. Why you was acting like that? What was wrong? No. There is nothing wrong with advocating for yourself. Like I said, as long as you were respectful, you stayed on topic, and you don't get, defensive or out of order, you don't need to be feeling guilty about anything. And I would even follow up that by saying it's a signal, though, that like if you're already at your wit's end to pause and go do something for yourself. And for everybody, that looks different. Like, you may just need to go take a woosah. You may, and shoot, everybody don't have no money. So sometimes that means just go sit in the car. You know what I'm saying? Go take a drive to, up the street to the grocery store, whatever. Just something by yourself, for yourself. And like I said, but that could be like, say, you giving yourself your self-care time. Maybe go get your hair and nails done. Like maybe go get a massage. Maybe go for a walk. Go to the gym. Sit in the car. Go to the grocery store. For me, it's travel, usually. Once I hit that point of I can't deal with people no more, I usually leave the entire country. I usually leave the entire country, honey. But whatever works for you and your budget and your lifestyle, it is important to take those moments to then like recenter yourself and do something for you so that you can find that sense of you-ness, right? You have to reclaim your personhood, because people will take as much as you're willing to give. And they'll even take more than you're willing to give if you're not willing to defend your right to not give it, to be honest. So I think our big picture, for today, our big theme for today is like, what is the price you're willing to pay to save yourself, to protect yourself, to preserve yourself? What is the price you're willing to pay for that? Because you're worth it. And sometimes the cost of your peace is somebody else's disappointment. Sometimes the cost of your peace and your rest is hurting somebody else's feelings. And honestly, I feel like like I said before, if the price of me advocating for myself and protecting myself is hurting your feelings, that's the price I'm willing to pay. Again, not because I'm mean or I'm an asshole or because, I seek to hurt anybody. It's because you have decided to enter my space in this way, and I just got to do what I got to do, because we all only get one life. And, we talked about this in another episode, but like, you're the main character of your story, and you can't allow other people to like make you a co-star in your own life, because you're already a co-star at best in other people's lives. But like, you can't let people diminish your own character presence in your story. You only get one life. It's going to be here and it's going to be gone. And it's up to you to defend it in a place that keeps you, like I said, sane and happy and calm as best you can. So I think, this conversation about like recentering our own needs without apology is important. And teaching, whether there are small children, how to learn boundaries at an early age is super important, and letting them know that like mommy needs space and mommy's a human being and mommy's a person, and just give me 1 second. It'll teach them how to be able to regulate themselves and their own boundaries as well as they get older. And the same thing with adult folks in our lives. I don't care if it's your partner, your parents, your siblings, people who are used to having access to you day or night, calling your phone, whatever the case may be, without sometimes even people's jobs, but like without acknowledging that like you have your own life and your own thing that doesn't just revolve around them. It's important to teach them just like we teach those toddlers. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I need a minute. I need me time, or I'm not processing it at my best, level right now, because I need to re-regulate. And it's really important that we learn to stand up for ourselves in that way. So I think this is an important conversation. It certainly is for me. Like I said, we are so far out from having life figured out at this age. And it's just a journey of learning how to be better, like I said, one day at a time. So that's it for today. Boundaries, privacy, autonomy. You're human and you deserve it just like everybody else. I'll holler at y'all later. Bye.